Order the April 10th, 2012 meeting of the Glendale City Council. Can we have a roll call, please?
Council members Manukian, Najarian,
Here.
Quintero,
Here.
Weaver,
Here.
Mayor Friedman.
Here. Can we hear your report, please?
The agenda for the April 10, 2012 special meeting, public meeting of the City Council was posted on Thursday, April 5, 2012 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. Before you today is a public hearing. It is the Director of Community Development regarding Stage 1 and 2 design review for Giggles nightclub located at 215 North Brand Boulevard, and request for use variance for sales, service, and on-site consumption of alcoholic beverages. 1A is a motion approving Stage 1 and 2 design review subject to comments and conditions of approval, and B is a motion approving use variance based on findings and subject to conditions and approval.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lansifane.
Ms. Mayor, members of the City Council.
This is a public hearing.
Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing, and if you can state your name for the record.
I'm Philip Lansifane, Chief Assistant Director of Community Development. The item before you is here because this property is located in the redevelopment agency, or I should say the redevelopment project area. If you recall, the redevelopment agency had a design review jurisdiction over that. With the dissolution of redevelopment, the authority has fallen to the City Council. We're also here because, if you remember, some years back, the redevelopment agency and City Council streamlined our process when you had a design approval and another discretionary approval that is being requested. They could be done in one item. That is the reason that we're here today and the item before you. I would like to introduce Brad Collin, Senior Planner, to introduce the project, and then the team is here to answer any of your questions.
Brad Collins, Senior Planner with Community Development. Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the Council. As I said, my name is Brad Collin. I'm the case planner of the subject use variance and design approval for Giggles nightclub at 215 North Brand Boulevard, which is located in the Alex Theater District of the Downtown Specific Plan. Here's some background for your consideration. The business was previously approved under conditional use permit, case 10378-CU, which permitted a restaurant, nightclub, and billiards establishment. That particular conditional use permit expires on August 1st of this year, and the operator wishes to operate Giggles as a nightclub. With the adoption of the Downtown Specific Plan designation within the primary frontage street, a nightclub is not allowed in the first 25 feet of the tennis space on Brand Boulevard, and therefore requires a use variance. Giggles has been in operation for 20 years and provides significant economic benefit to the downtown community. The owner is proposing to continue operation of the nightclub in conjunction with the facade remodel facing Brand Boulevard. The facade remodel will significantly upgrade the exterior of the building, providing for an interesting focal point when the nightclub is not open. Most of the work will occur at the upper portion of the facade, with the storefront retained and repainted. Staff believes that the design is appropriate and in keeping with the appearance of nearby buildings and storefronts on Brand Boulevard, and is recommending approval subject to conditions. Staff believes that the required findings can be met for the use variance application for the nightclub and recommends approval with conditions. This concludes my presentation. I'm available to answer any questions. I also have Sharon Garrett from Economic Development and Jay Platt from our design studio if you have any specific questions for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Mr. Weaver?
Does the owner have any problem with any of the provisions that you've asked for?
A couple conditions that we'd like to talk about.
Well,
Okay,
yeah.
I'll ask you to come up in a minute.
Okay, somebody else will answer it. Thank you.
Other questions?
Any other questions at this time? Okay, I have one card. Rodney Kahn.
You can answer the question. Mr. Cohen.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, and City staff. My name is Rodney Kahn. My offices are located on North Brand Boulevard, Suite 403 here in the city of Glendale. Before I begin my presentation, Mr. Weaver, yes, there are a few conditions of approval that we'd like clarification on, and a couple that we'd like to see if we can get slightly modified. So I'll get to that, and I'll be brief in my presentation. As staff mentioned, as Mr. Collin mentioned, Giggles has been in business since 1992. So for the last 20 years, Mr. Glustian has operated his business in a very responsible, very professional manner. Most recently, Mr. Glustian purchased the building where his business is located in, and thus is doing the upgrades along with the renewal, we thought, of the conditional use permit, which turned out to be a variance request. As was mentioned, we're in the downtown specific plan, the Alex Theater District. The downtown specific plan was adopted back in 2006. Giggles has been in effect for the last 20 years, I mentioned, so about a 16-year gap or difference in terms of the approval. This new condition or requirement for a 25-foot lot depth of the ground floor not being used as a nightclub. To us, this standard should not apply to this long-established business simply because the conditional use permit is set to expire. Nevertheless, it does, and that's why we're here today. We're asking for relief from the standard and approval for the design improvements, which if you have a illustration in your package, you can see that the improvements that were described by Mr. Collin in the presentation have really taken it a notch up and really upgrades that Brand Boulevard facade. In terms of the conditions, and I'll be fairly brief, one, there was some just clarification that we needed. There were a couple items. We skipped a couple numbers. I see that we went from 7, 8 to 10, and then 12, 13 to 15. So we're just assuming that's a clerical error and that there is no condition number 9 or condition number 14. Condition number 25, it says the front and back doors of the establishment shall be kept closed at all times while the restaurant is open for business. Just a clarification, there is no restaurant proposed. It is solely a nightclub. Two other clarifications. One is condition number 39, which talks about the premises may not be regularly used for banquet hall or private events. Mr. Glustian has charitable events and fundraisers which have restricted access to the general public. We just want to know what regularly, the definition of that means.
Go ahead, I'll let you finish with the conditions.
Okay. And then the last condition is condition number 40. It talks about the authorization granted and the use variance shall be valid for a period of 10 years. We just came off a conditional use permit that was granted for 10 years. Mr. Glustian has operated himself in a very professional manner, has established himself in the area, has purchased the business. To apply for these types of variances are very expensive. Just the use variance itself was $10,000. So anything we could do to talk about this approval being granted for, say, 20 years instead of 10 years, if you would consider that, we would greatly appreciate it. Those are my comments. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Khan at this time? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to ask staff to just give us a response to the requests for the conditions.
With regard to the condition as to the use of banquet hall, I guess the main purpose of that condition is to acknowledge that this is going to be a nightclub and not a banquet hall, because a banquet hall would require its own conditional use permit. In terms of what do we mean regularly, we left that open because we do understand that a nightclub from time to time is going to have charitable events or events similar to that they could have they could use as a special event, and then we have a special event permit process for that. As long as the main use remains a nightclub and does not become a banquet hall, they're meeting that condition. If they would like us to and we were not aware that this was an issue, or else we would have been prepared to come up with language that would restrict it to a certain number or to a certain set of conditions. But we could come up with a process through which they could come and let us know that they're going to have a special event and for events that are not the regular nightclub use. The whole purpose of that condition is just not allow the morphing of a nightclub to a banquet hall without proper permits. That's really it.
And then the other one was about the use variance in 10 years.
10 years is, in our view, is a very good long period for a use variance. If it's up to the city council if you choose otherwise, but regularly, if within the next 10 years there are no problems, it will be very, very quick that we can come up with a regular meeting, or you may even authorize staff, the director, to approve this within 10 years if there are no other issues. However, we would like to have the ability to look at a business's practices, even if it is Giggles that we have had around for 20 years. Should this ever be sold, we would like to have that option in 10 years to take a look at their practices and if there are any reasons to take a different direction on it.
Then can you modify the restaurant, the condition with the restaurant?
Right. We could change that wording to reflect nightclub use.
I assume we could do on the 10-year issue, could we do 2 5-year extensions if there aren't any violations?
That would be completely appropriate. If you would like to change that to 2 5-year extensions administratively, unless when we could put a language that unless the staff determines that the public review at the public hearing is warranted, then they may apply and get an administrative extension.
Yeah. What about the 25-foot setback?
The 25-foot setback, the use variance effectively removes that.
Yeah,
We're not
right.
changing that standard, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Perhaps. With regard to the 10-year CUP, is there a way to tie the length of the CUP to this gentleman's ownership and management? Because I hope we haven't forgotten the nightmare on the hill next to the In-N-Out that we used to have. And that was, I don't want to say the name, I don't want to say the individual, that was a very difficult situation for the police department and for the community in general. The difference between Giggles and that place is this gentleman is operating it professionally, responsibly, with the appropriate number of security, the appropriate discretion by...
Just when you're done.
The appropriate... I thought I was crossing over into another...
No.
Verboten area. And he's proven that he knows how to run the nightclub responsibly. I don't want to extend this to a nice 10-year period, and should he decide not to continue operating it, have some irresponsible, ignorant nightclub manager bring the nightmare to the center of our downtown, which could spread problems throughout the entire Brand area. So is there any way that we can tailor something like that? As long as he's running it, I'm happy to give him 20 years. But at the time he wants to sell it, I want a thorough review as to the new owner and a trial period, probation period, if you will, to see if that new owner has the wherewithal to continue the responsible operation of the night.
There is a way, but I'd like the city attorney to comment first, but I have an idea.
Can I just ask for clarification? Are you saying within the first 10 years, within this 10 years?
Whenever he sells?
Yeah, see, my problem is...
Are you talking about within that 10 years? I understand your concern,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure if you're saying after the 10 years or within the 10 years.
I'm very... I'd like to keep a very close look on this if the current owner and manager were to sell and to move on.
Mr. Garcia.
That's my
If I may, Madam Mayor, members of council, I wanted to address that issue as well as the condition on the banquet hall. Generally speaking, the land use entitlements like conditional use permits and variances run with the land. So it would be my view that to put a condition there that it goes away once they sell, or if they sell, it would probably not be enforceable if someone were to challenge it. So I think that's one of the reasons why staff is recommending somewhat of a short term, because it's a lengthy term, but it's not in perpetuity. It will at least give us a chance after a number of years to look at it again. In addition, obviously, the staff monitors these things, and if there's a new owner, that would be something that would trigger, some additional review, perhaps by staff, just to make sure they're continuing to operate it in a manner that's not contrary to the health, safety, and welfare of the city. But again, our concern legally is that wouldn't be enforceable. There's been some case law on that regarding the enforceability of tying a land use entitlement to a particular owner or lessee of property.
If the city attorney is amenable and finds this appropriate, one condition that we can add right now to the conditions of approval is that they will be subject to the same licensing requirement as in the arts and entertainment district, where the manager of the property needs to be licensed, and we do a background check. And if the current owner is amenable to that, we would make that a condition. Since they are getting a use permit to have the same use that's allowed by right in the Arts and Entertainment District, we could have them be subject to the same requirements, that the manager will be required to have a manager's permit, and that we will have to do a background check. And if they change managers, every new manager will have to be subject to the same review. That way, not only the current owner, but future owners will be subject to the same condition.
Before we ask the applicant about that, I wanted to just get clarification about the banquet hall.
Right.
Because to me, just reading this, it does sound very vague. I mean, it's the kind of thing
we've
that...
actually had some battles on this before.
Yeah.
My preference is what we've done in the past is just to say they have to operate as a nightclub as defined in the code, and they can't operate as a banquet hall as defined in the code. And then those are the mechanisms that will allow, rather than using terms like regularly and whatnot, it'll be an issue that the staff can then monitor on an ongoing basis. But to the extent when we start putting language in the conditions that says regularly or, primary, that sort of thing, I'd prefer not to have that language in there.
So if we have the language that just says they have to operate as a nightclub, does that mean they can't ever do banquets, or that they can, but they as they said before, the primary use can't change?
Well, I think what Mr. Agani is suggesting, something I would agree with, is that they would have to apply for some special event permit that the cities that has, so they can do that type of activity, because it wouldn't be allowed under...
Is that a difficult process for them?
Special event?
It's not a difficult process for the facilities that do not have a history of problems. It becomes a difficult process for people who've had issues with us.
Is there a fee for that?
Yes, I don't remember exactly. It's not exorbitant.
Only other thing, and I don't know, this goes back to non-conforming issues, whether it was something they were doing before 2002 when we adopted banquet hall, then that might be something we'd have to look at as far as how it's whether that was something they were doing prior to.
Except right now they're changing their use to a use variance, and any non-conforming rights are gone.
Mr. Lanzapane?
If I could add, just conferring with the owner, he does this very rarely, so if there's an opportunity to put a number, no more, not to exceed 4 times a year, perhaps that solves the difficulty of getting a permit and monitoring.
Yeah, because I'd rather, if we can do something like that, where they don't have to go and get a permit and pay a fee, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, my concern is more of it being open-ended.
No, but if we put a number on it.
If you put a number, however, then you could put a condition that they would be limited to X number of times. However, they would have to come and apply so that we can track the number of times, but without a fee. That would be completely okay.
Weaver, did you have a question?
Just want to add to it, the advantage of the special event notification does is for the police, whatever, know there's something exceptional is happening there out of the ordinary. Just the notification to any department, whether it's police or whatever, then you have a count of what's happening anyhow if it does.
And that would be the reason not to waive the fee, because from time to time we come across a special event that does require additional study by fire and police, and that does require additional regulations, and sometimes more conditions that will be costly. So if you're going to say there's no application fee, however, other fees may apply, that would be acceptable.
Okay, I think that I don't see any other questions right now. I'm going to close the public hearing and go to the council for comments.
Excuse me, were you going to bring up the owner you want to ask him?
I don't have a card.
No,
If you have
if you want to
questions,
add-
if we have questions, I can reopen the public hearing and bring him back up.
Well, I'm very much in support, as been mentioned. Giggles has been around a long time. I remember Mr. Weaver used a disco there
Did?
2 or 3 nights.
I forget.
2 or 3 nights a week in his disco days. But, anyway, just kidding. No, I think they've done a great job throughout the years, and absolutely every weekend it's packed with people, younger people, I should say, but I'm sure they do something other than go to Giggles, maybe eat beforehand or afterwards, so it's a positive, very positive business, and the operators have done a great job in the past. I like the design, actually. I think it looks going to look very good, very cool. So anyway, I'm in total support with some of the conditions that we mentioned. I don't want to make them onerous, though. I think he's proven his mettle, although Mr. Jerry makes a good point about a change of ownership. But for sure, I think the 10 years and then 2 5-year, not unlike a commercial lease, 2 5-year periods where if there haven't been any problems or complaints, the staff can kind of do it over the counter. I think that's a way to go.
It's not easy running a nightclub. I don't know how to do it, but I can see the ones that aren't run well. It creates problems for the city galore, and they're not easy to solve. They're not easy to quell. It can bring the wrong element and be a hotbed for crime. But Giggles has been run and managed superbly with very few, if any, problems that I've been made aware of. So I'm happy to encourage him to continue his ownership and management and go with the 10-year plus the 2 5-year administrative. What are we calling them? Administrative extensions to that. I'm happy with the design, and I think it's a great draw to Glendale.
If I could just make one more comment. Also, this is obviously what we're trying to do in the downtown, and in a sense, this is a catalyst for other businesses that may choose to move in. And then the second point is there's absolutely no issues with homeowners, with residential areas. It's in the core of the downtown. There's plenty of parking, not only the structures, but surface parking lots, so it's in the perfect location.
Well, I've known Garnick and his late brother for, 20 years, something like that now. There's different times I've gone to events at the Alex, and I've gone across to the nightclub. It's always jammed, well controlled, no police problems. They have heavy security, front and back. It's just, and the mood of council over the last decade has changed. 10 years ago, you mentioned a nightclub on Brand, oh my God, last thing we want. Now we're to the bent where we're trying to bring nightclubs, restaurants, more entertainment downtown. It's a great ability for people going to events at the Alex to come out, go across the street, and you're almost at Giggles' doorstep. I would hope that the Arts Commission, whatever, the arts downtown, would start promoting Giggles to come out. People don't know. It's kind of dark on the outside. You can't tell all that's going inside. But if they knew they could come out of an event at the Alex, go across the street, enjoy themselves, yeah. And the majority of the crowd comes from out of town. I've seen their mailing list of cards that go out, hundreds and thousands of people, and they come into Glendale, most of them from out of town. Yeah, they're the, I would call the very young, 25, 30, 35, the very young group that come in there. So it's a great place. I like the design, and I'm glad you're the owner now. And stay there a few decades, okay? And everything my colleague said is fine with me.
Well, I like the design a lot. I'm fine with the 10 years plus the 2 5 years administrative extensions. I would like to clear up this banquet hall issue because I don't have any problem with this owner, but if someone else comes in, I don't like these vague, regularly, sometimes, maybe, primarily. I can just see that leading to trouble. So staff, I think, can get together with the owner and come up with a number that's everybody feels is reasonable, or 6 even, give them a little flexibility, whatever, so that they don't have to get a special permit unless. But I do think the notification, and if staff feels that it's appropriate, if it's for some reason an extra large event, that maybe they would be asked to do a special event permit if staff believes that it's warranted in a certain case. But just for the regular run-of-the-mill event, I don't think that would be necessary, and I don't want them to have to go through any bureaucratic hurdles or pay extra fees just for those kinds of events. So if council is okay with that, those modifications.
Madam Mayor, would you like me to go through all the conditions that were discussed, that the
Sure.
council seems to agree on with respect?
There's 3 conditions, because we need to also, on the record, alter the restaurant one, I
Correct,
think.
right. Well, one of them was obviously to renumber, to take into account missing conditions 9 and 14, to amend condition 25 to replace the word restaurant with nightclub. Condition number 39 it'll just say it has to operate as a restaurant, as a nightclub, and not a banquet hall. However, it will be the owner will be entitled to have 4 to 6 private events a year, without violating this condition. And I think we should put that in the condition just so that there's no ambiguity later on. Condition 40 would be revised to.
And that's with notification to
Correct.
staff, and with staff having the ability to require a special event permit if they feel that it's warranted.
Okay. And then condition 40 would be a 10-year approval period with 2 5-year extensions by staff, provided there are no condition violations or the property is otherwise not being operated as a nuisance. And I think that's all I have. Oh, and the owner has agreed to a nightclub license similar to the license that we have in the Arts and Entertainment District, and so that will be a condition number 42, that they'll be required to apply for and obtain that nightclub license.
Okay, I will make the motion with those conditions as listed.
Okay, so that's a motion for 1A and B, correct?
It can be for 1A and B, or just 1A? Okay, for both
Second.
1A and B.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Council members Menuchyan, Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Friedman.
Yes. Next item?
There are no other items on this agenda?
To adjourn?
You want to vote on this, Mr. Menuchyan?
In that case, the special meeting is adjourned.